Today, guys, we are talking about how to throw punches, whether it's on a sparring partner or in a fight, without getting countered super easy. This has been a very, very popular request, which means many people are probably struggling with it. Fair enough, it's not the easiest thing to do, to step in on somebody, let your hands go, and not make one of the 7 mistakes that I'm going to give you today. So after the intro, guys, we're going to talk about how to throw punches without getting countered super easy. Alright guys, not getting countered when you start letting your hands go is a difficult thing, because as soon as your hands leave your head, as soon as you make any little adjustment, there is an opening that is created. I throw the jab, I'm open for the uppercut. My head is open for the hook. My head is open for straight punches, assuming I don't do everything as perfect as possible. Now, one of the first things that you can just do to make sure you're not getting countered is to really sharpen up your technique, but that just basically means that I have to take you through a full tutorial on how to throw a punch properly. Shoulder high, other hand high, turning over so your shoulder gets the maximum height. I don't want to go through all that today. I want to go through basic tips that don't so much involve technique. These are going to be very beneficial, but just be aware that if you think like, oh, okay, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to hit the guy, and your hand drops, and then you jab, well, that's a tell. And every time you do that, you're going to get countered because you have that tell. So sharpen that up if it's an issue, and then these tips will sort of be the finishing touch to make sure that you're able to let those hands go without getting hit in return every time. And the very first tip, guys, is to utilize fakes. If every time I move, every single time, I go movement, attack. Next time, movement, attack. It's right away easy for him to tell every time there's any movement, it's going to be an attack. And he might be somebody who can take a step backwards and throw a long counter. So all he has to do is wait for movement. There's no surprise element for him. But if I utilize fakes, fakes could be a pump of the shoulder. It could be a flick of the hand from out of distance. Instead of stepping in, I just flick and then I throw. I'm trying to get a reaction out of him so he doesn't know whether I'm attacking or I'm faking. When somebody doesn't know and they start getting a little uneasy and they start twitching unnecessarily, then sometimes when you start throwing your fakes, they might overbite on it, or they might not react when you go to throw your full punch and you step in. You have to utilize fakes to make sure that you keep them always guessing. It needs to be a guessing game for them. And remember, you can utilize fakes with your kicks as well. It doesn't always need to be touch, touch. I can pump my hip. I can lift my knee. And doing either of those or one of the many other fakes with my legs, it will create openings at head level. I lift, they go to block with their elbow, I come over top. I lift, they go to catch, I come up top. This isn't the only thing that's going to stop you from getting countered every time you move in, but it's one thing that is very beneficial. Next up, guys, still keeping things below the waist, we're talking about footwork. Footwork is super important on the exit. That's what this all comes down to. I mean, yes, I can jump to the side, cut angles on my entry, but that's very advanced. I'm talking more about footwork, not staying stationary. So I've moved in, I've thrown my shots. If I hang here, I give him an opportunity to counter me immediately. I want to go 1, 2, and I want to be gone. It could be a 5-punch combo, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but then I'm gone. So the only way this guy can counter me is if he counters in between my punches. That is much more difficult to do than counter when somebody's in the middle of punches. If I have 1, 2, 3 and I stop, counter. But for him to hit me in the middle of that before I exit is much more difficult. So if you're not already utilizing footwork, make sure you start implementing it in shadow boxing, bag work, on pad work, so that every time I'm bouncing around and I move in, I exit. I move in, throw my combo, and I always exit. Once you start utilizing that in those more basic training elements, it'll start coming out in sparring. It'll make a big difference for not getting countered at the end of your combination. All right, next we're talking about mixing up attacks. If you become very predictable, every time you move in, it's a jab, it's a jab. It'll take me about 2 of those. For me personally, if somebody throws the same thing twice in a row, on the 3rd time, when they come with the jab, I'm going to slip to the inside and I'm going to clock them in the head right there. That's my favorite, the corkscrew over top. If they throw across every time they come in, I'll probably drop to the side and I'll body shot them. You need to be very aware that you're mixing your attacks up and you're not being too predictable. Sometimes predictable is just only using the upper body. If you really like using your hands and you're not mixing up between the limbs, lower and upper, it's going to be very predictable in kickboxing. Now that doesn't mean you need to kick all the time, but it does mean that sometimes you just want to lift your leg. And that goes back to the fakes, where you're faking with the bottom half of your body. Or if you're a big kicker and you don't utilize your hands much, I'm still flicking my hands up to create the opening for the legs. And it just makes this guy more scared, more on edge when the attack is not always the same thing. Same thing. Maybe I come down to the body. Maybe I lead with an uppercut. Maybe I lead with a hook. Maybe I start with a low kick and then let my hands take over before I finish my kickoff. Mixing up your attacks is a sign of somebody who's more intermediate advanced as opposed to beginner, where they lead with the same thing over and over. That will make you very, very easy to counter. Small adjustment. Just be more creative, more diverse in your initial attack. And a quick pause, guys. If you have not already, please give the video a like. Of course, join the channel, get subscribed, and let's move on. Next up, and this is something that I've been working on in jiu-jitsu, when somebody gets my back, shoulders up, chin down. Same thing here. We don't want to have our head up high and our shoulders down low when we move in and we throw, because our entire head's open. I want to have my hands up and my chin down so that when I'm throwing, if they go to throw a counter shot right now, my shoulder is protecting most of my head. My hand's protecting most of my head, and my chin isn't up here, leaving my forehead exposed and my jaw exposed. My chin tucks, jaw is protected, and my forehead's only slightly exposed. So making sure you're keeping yourself safe with that basic, constant reminder of drawing your chin in, looking through your eyebrows, and lifting those hands and shoulders up. Yes, it leaves your body a little bit more exposed, but I'd rather have my body slightly exposed than have my head getting rattled all the time every time I move in to throw a combo. Now, one of the elements that I've been super diligent about throughout the years is protecting my head with my hands. Now that sounds super beginner, but it's surprising how many people, when they get going, the hands start dropping and they're throwing mid combo here, which means every time this side of my head's open, now the opposite side of my head's open, and that's going to make you very easy to counter. So when you're shadow boxing, try to make sure your hands are coming right from your forehead, and every time I finish punching, I bring my hands right back to my forehead to protect myself as much as possible. That's what I want to be working on. You can just shadow light, just pop, pop, but always touching your hands to your head. When you lack that element, it's super easy to counter. Somebody comes in, they throw a jab, I go, okay, their right hand's down. Next time they come and throw the jab, but I just hit them. Makes it so simple, especially somebody who has eyesight. And that is our next point. We are talking about having fantastic eyesight so that when somebody does throw at you, or when you're in the middle of moving in, you go, okay, I'm going to jump in and maybe throw a few punches, and you get to your second punch, you're watching them, you see them start to wind up, and instead of having your eyes closed or blinking or whatever you might be doing, instead of following with punch number 3, you're able to exit or you're able to block. Using eyesight is one of those suggestions where I give you something, you're going, okay, that's great. How do I do it? It's not that easy. While I understand not blinking and focusing on the target is very, very difficult, especially when people are throwing at you, it's something you really want to drill with a partner. Set yourself up across from a partner. You move in, you throw 3 light punches. I'm not closing my fist and making them like concrete balls. I just keep them relaxed. I go in 1, 2, 3. They come to me. Block, block, block. Attack, attack, attack. Block, block, block. Attack, attack, attack. And we work back and forward. And this is all for the eyesight. I'm learning how to keep my eyes laser focused on them as I throw. And even more important, on them as I defend. My eyes are locked. As soon as I start doing that, or turning, I become much easier to counter. And my final tip for today, guys, in reference to not getting countered every time, is make sure your head is not always straight above you. You don't need to move in and have your head right above you like you're locked up with a body cast and you can't move. You can enter, drop your head, throw a couple punches, drop your head. I can do it on my hooks. Uppercuts, I need to have my head right above my hips, but all the other punches, I can drop to the side to make sure that I'm not keeping my head completely above me every moment of my attack. I personally like to get my head off the center line on the initial movement and then throw, and then with my eyesight, as we talked about, I see them throwing back at me, I exit or I block. Head off the center line, for the first attack of your combination is going to make a world of difference, especially if the guy has longer arms. If I have short arms and I move in to hit him, but he has long arms, every time I move in, he hits me. So I decide, okay, I'm going to use my footwork, I'm going to utilize some fakes, I'm going to use my eyesight, I go to jump in, and bang, he hits me. Just because his arms are longer than mine. All he has to do every time I move is just go, bump, bump. So I get my head off the center line on the entry, and then I can work from my preferred distance. So guys, having the ability to throw your combos and not get countered every time, it is something that is slow going. Don't expect to do it in a week or a month or a year even. Sometimes it takes years of training to become very accomplished at this. But utilizing the tips, the 7 tips that I give you today, will make a world of difference. Try to make sure each one is dialed in. Don't leave one of the elements out, like, oh, I have 6, I'm not going to bother with the 7th. You want all of these down pat to be very, very efficient and dangerous and safe in all these different elements when you decide to step in, let your hands go and exit, or step in, let your hands go and block before exiting. Not getting countered when you punch is an amazing asset. Makes it so much more fun for you not getting hit. And I truly hope this video helps many of you out there get better at letting those hands go and not be scared of getting countered every time. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you have not already, join the channel, get subscribed. Train hard, guys, and I'll see you back here soon for another video.